The paintbrush slipped. Owen Harper watched the girl's fingers struggle to catch it before it hit the concrete. She couldn't have been more than 22, hunched over watercolors spread across a wool blanket on Portland's frozen sidewalk. The blue turban, the hollow cheeks, the way her breath came shallow and quick. Owen's chest tightened. He'd seen this before. His daughter Ruby pressed against his leg, silent, staring at a painting of a little girl reaching toward stars she couldn't touch. The sign by the girl's knee read, "Art for Hope, $20 to $35. When she looked up, her eyes held something Owen recognized instantly, the quiet defiance of someone refusing to beg. He reached for his wallet. She shook her head. "I don't take pity money, sir." Ruby's hand tightened around his. The girl's fingers trembled harder, and Owen made a decision that would either save 3 lives or cost him everything he'd spent a decade building. Owen crouched down slowly, ignoring the protest from his knees against the frozen pavement. He kept his voice gentle, the way he'd learned when Ruby felt overwhelmed in crowds. "What's your name?" The girl blinked, clearly surprised by a question instead of money being thrust at her. "Stella Grant." Her voice carried that rasp of too many nights spent coughing in the dark. Owen nodded, his eyes moving across the paintings spread before them on the threadbare blanket. Ruby stepped forward without prompting, something she almost never did with strangers she'd just met. She pointed at the painting of the child reaching for stars, her small finger hovering carefully above the canvas. "This looks like when I talk to Mommy at night." The words came out matter-of-fact, the way children speak about things adults can barely articulate. Stella's eyes widened slightly, and Owen saw her throat move as she swallowed hard. "Does your mommy live somewhere far away?" Ruby shook her head, still studying the painting with unusual intensity for a 9-year-old child. "She's in heaven now. Daddy says she can see me through the stars when I look up." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was recognition, the kind that happens when people identify their own pain reflected in someone else. Stella's hand moved unconsciously to adjust her turban, and Owen caught the slight wince that crossed her pale face. He'd seen Catherine make that exact gesture during her last months, when even fabric against skin felt unbearable. "How long?" Owen asked quietly, and Stella didn't pretend not to understand his meaning. 8 months since diagnosis. Ovarian cancer, stage 3. I've got about 10 weeks left before they say it's too late for the surgery that might work. She said it without tears or drama, just stating facts the way you'd report weather conditions. Owen pulled out his phone, not his wallet, and Stella's shoulders tensed visibly. "I'm not calling anyone official," he said quickly, watching her relax slightly. "I want to look you up." He typed her name into the search bar, and within seconds found what he was looking for. A Maine College of Art newsletter from 8 months ago with the headline, "Rising Senior Battles Cancer While Completing Thesis Work." The photo showed Stella with long auburn hair and a brilliant smile, standing beside an installation piece. The girl before him looked like a faded shadow of that vibrant image. "You're 2 semesters from graduating," Owen said, reading from his screen. "Full scholarship recipient. Your professor called you one of the most promising watercolor artists in 20 years. Stella's jaw tightened, and for a moment Owen thought she might tell him to leave immediately. Instead, she spoke quietly, her words edged with exhaustion. "That was before everything changed. Before they pulled my scholarship when I took medical leave. Universities apparently don't like funding students who might die before finishing their degrees." The bitterness in her voice wasn't directed at anyone specifically. It was just weariness, the kind that settles deep when you've fought alone too long. Owen felt something shift in his chest, remembering Catherine's last words about showing Ruby what having resources really meant. Ruby tugged at Owen's coat sleeve, her face carrying that serious expression that always broke his heart. "Daddy, can we help Miss Stella? Like Mommy wanted us to help people who need it? Owen felt Catherine's promise settling on his shoulders, the one about teaching Ruby that the world was worth caring about. He looked at Stella, at the way she sat with her spine straight despite obvious pain, at paintings that captured what grief looked like when transformed into beauty. This was the moment Catherine had asked him to recognize and act upon. "Stella," Owen said slowly, choosing each word with deliberate care, "I want to make you an offer. I need you to hear me out completely before you refuse." She didn't respond, just waited with the wariness of someone who'd learned offers usually came with hidden costs. "I'm not offering charity or pity. I want to commission new work from you specifically. 15 original pieces in your style. Whatever subjects you choose to paint, I won't interfere with your creative process whatsoever. I'll pay market rate for an emerging artist at your documented skill level. That's between $1,500 and $3,000 per piece, depending on size and technical complexity." Owen continued, watching her face carefully. Stella's expression went pale, which was saying something given how little color she had left. "That's not market rate for a student selling on sidewalks. That's charity dressed up as business." Owen shook his head firmly, his voice taking on the decisive tone he used in boardrooms. "It's exactly market rate. I've served on the Portland Museum of Art board for 6 years straight. I know what galleries pay for work at your caliber and training level. The only reason you don't know it is because you've been selling on sidewalks instead of in proper exhibitions," Owen explained patiently. He paused, letting that information settle into her understanding. "I run Harper & Associates, an architecture firm downtown. We have office space that could function as a professional gallery. I want to exhibit your work properly, the way it deserves to be seen and valued." Stella stared at him, clearly trying to find the angle, the catch, the hidden price she'd eventually have to pay for this offer. "Why?" The single word came out sharp, almost accusatory in its directness and suspicion. Stella leaned forward despite the obvious discomfort it caused, her eyes searching his face for hidden motives. "Why would you do this for a complete stranger you just met?" Owen glanced at Ruby, who had settled onto the cold concrete and was now examining each painting with careful attention. "Because 3 years ago, my wife Catherine died of breast cancer. She fought for 18 months, and I had every resource available. The best doctors, experimental treatments, everything money could possibly buy. None of it mattered in the end." Owen continued, his voice steady, but his hands tightening in his pockets. "And every day since, I've watched my daughter try to process losing her mother by drawing pictures constantly. She's trying to capture feelings she doesn't have words for yet at 9 years old. When Ruby looked at your painting and saw herself in it, that told me something crucial. You're not just technically skilled. You're painting truth, the kind that actually matters, the kind Catherine would have told me to recognize and support." Stella's eyes were shining now, though she blinked rapidly to keep tears contained. "And if I say yes?" Stella asked, her voice barely above a whisper now. "If I accept your commission? What happens when people find out you're only doing this because I'm sick and dying? What does that do to my reputation as a serious artist?" Owen stood up slowly, brushing off his knees, and extended his hand to help Stella to her feet. She hesitated for a long moment before taking it, her palm cool and fragile against his larger hand. "Then we make absolutely certain that doesn't happen to your career and reputation. We do this right and professionally," Owen said firmly. "You create the work on your timeline. I provide the exhibition space. We bring in a professional curator to handle the show properly. We price everything fairly with clear documentation of provenance. If people want to see charity in that, it's their problem entirely. Anyone who actually knows art will recognize quality when they encounter it." Ruby stood too, still holding the star painting carefully in both small hands. "Can I buy this one, Miss Stella? I have $17 saved in my piggy bank at home." Stella looked down at Ruby, and something shifted visibly in her defensive expression. "You can have it, sweetheart. No charge for someone who truly understands it. Ruby's eyes went wide with delight, but Owen put a gentle hand on his daughter's shoulder. No, Ruby. Miss Stella just told us she doesn't accept pity money, remember? If you want that painting, you pay the asking price written on her sign. He looked at Stella steadily. She's asking $25, and that's exactly what you'll pay. Fair exchange means fair on both sides always. Ruby nodded seriously, somehow understanding that this mattered more than simple childhood politeness. Okay, Daddy. I'll bring all my money next Saturday when we come back. Stella carefully rolled the painting and secured it with a piece of worn twine, her movements precise despite the visible tremor in her hands. Deal. But I need something from you too, Mr. Harper, if I accept your commission offer. When the exhibition happens, my medical situation doesn't become part of the promotional marketing materials. The art stands completely alone. People buy it because they think it's good, not because they pity the dying girl. Owen respected the steel in her voice, the clear line she was drawing between accepting help and becoming a charity case. Agreed completely, he said without hesitation. The only thing I'd ask is honesty if someone questions us directly about anything. I won't volunteer information, but I also won't lie for you or anyone else. Is that acceptable to you? Stella considered this carefully for several seconds, weighing her limited options against her fierce principles. Fair enough. That's reasonable on both sides. Owen pulled a business card from his wallet, wrote his personal cell number on the back, and handed it to her. Think about my offer carefully. Owen said, Call me when you've made your decision either way. But Stella, decide quickly. Not because of me or my schedule, but because you genuinely don't have time to waste on pride if you want to survive this fight. The words were blunt, almost harsh in their directness, but they needed to be said clearly without sugarcoating. He'd learned during Catherine's illness that sometimes real kindness meant being honest about the clock that was ticking relentlessly down. Stella took the card with trembling fingers and nodded slowly, understanding his meaning completely. That night, after Ruby had fallen asleep with her new painting propped carefully against her nightstand, Owen sat in his home office staring at financial spreadsheets. The numbers were straightforward enough on the surface. 15 commissioned pieces at an average of $2,000 each meant $30,000. Exhibition costs including professional lighting, promotion, an opening event, and insurance would run another $15,000 to $20,000 total. If they priced the work reasonably and sold even half the collection, he'd recoup most of his investment through sales. But recouping costs wasn't really the point. He pulled up Stella's crowdfunding page and read through her story with careful attention to every detail. She'd written it herself in prose that was careful and deliberately factual without emotional manipulation. I require surgery that my student insurance won't adequately cover. The total cost is $250,000. I've raised $80,000 through insurance coverage and personal savings. I'm requesting assistance with the remaining $170,000. In exchange, I'm offering commissioned artwork to major donors. The page had been active for 6 months and had raised only $12,000 beyond her original $80,000. At this rate, she'd be dead before reaching her goal. Owen leaned back in his leather chair, thinking about Catherine's last, truly lucid conversation with him. She'd been so weak by then that her voice barely rose above a whisper, but her grip on his hand had been surprisingly fierce and determined. Promise me something important, Owen. Promise you won't let Ruby grow up thinking the world is just about making money and playing it safe always. Show her that having resources means you can actually do something that matters. Don't just write checks to charities and feel satisfied. Find someone you can genuinely save and save them. He'd promised immediately, not fully understanding, too devastated to think beyond the next hour. But maybe this was it. Maybe this was Catherine's promise finally coming due, presenting itself in the form of a dying girl with extraordinary talent. His phone buzzed suddenly, startling him from his thoughts. A text from an unknown number appeared on the screen. "This is Stella Grant. I've thought about your offer. I'll do it, but I have more conditions we need to discuss. Can we meet tomorrow to talk about specific terms?" Owen smiled slightly, appreciating her businesslike approach despite desperate circumstances. She might be dying, but she wasn't going to be anyone's passive charity project. He texted back. "My office. 10 a.m. Harper & Associates, 20th floor of Franklin Tower. I'll have coffee and contracts ready." The next morning, Stella arrived exactly at 10 o'clock, wearing jeans and a heavy coat that looked too big, the same blue turban covering her head. Owen's assistant Jennifer had been briefed because she showed Stella in without the usual visitor screening process. Owen stood from behind his desk, which overlooked Portland's Old Port District through floor-to-ceiling windows. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit." He gestured to the informal seating area by the windows, deliberately choosing the comfortable couches over the power dynamic of his imposing desk. Stella sat carefully, her movements precise, as if each one required conscious thought. "I brought my portfolio," Stella said, pulling out a tablet from her bag. "If you're commissioning work, you should see the full range of what I can do." She handed it to Owen. He scrolled through images, landscapes that felt emotional rather than just scenic, portraits that captured something essential about their subjects, abstract pieces that used color like other artists used words. "These are remarkable," Owen said honestly. "You have a particular way with light. It feels like memory rather than just visual representation." Stella's voice gained confidence. "That's the goal. My thesis explores visual memory, how we remember moments as feelings with colors attached, not as photographs." Owen set the tablet aside. "Tell me your additional conditions." Stella pulled out folded paper from her pocket, handwritten notes in careful script. "First, I keep creative control. You don't tell me what to paint or how. You can suggest themes or preferences, but final decisions are mine." Owen nodded. "Agreed. I'm commissioning art, not ordering products." Stella continued. "Second, I need a timeline that accounts for my medical situation. Some days I can't work. Some days I'll be too sick. I'll try for 15 pieces in 3 months, but I can't guarantee consistency." "Understood," Owen said. "We'll work around your schedule completely. The exhibition happens when the work is ready, not on a fixed date." Stella's shoulders relaxed slightly. "Third, and this is important, I don't want your daughter involved beyond being a normal visitor. I saw how Ruby looked at me. Kids get attached, and I don't want her hurt if I don't make it." Owen felt a sharp pang at that blunt statement, but he understood the protective instinct. "Ruby makes her own choices about who she cares about. I can't promise she won't get attached, but I can promise we'll be honest with her about your situation." Stella looked out this window at the city below. "How did your wife handle it with Ruby? How do you tell a 6-year-old their mother is dying?" Owen was quiet, remembering those impossible conversations. Catherine told her that bodies are like houses we live in, and sometimes houses get too broken to fix. She said her body was like that, but the part that loved Ruby wasn't in the body. That part would always be there, like air you can't see but know exists because you breathe it. His voice roughened slightly. Stella said softly, "That's beautiful. My parents died when I was 16, house fire. They went back in to save my artwork, and the floor collapsed." Owen saw the connection clearly. "Then you understand Ruby's paintings, about keeping people alive by making art about them." Stella nodded slowly. "I do understand that now." Owen leaned forward. "Then you understand why I can't keep Ruby away from this. Because this isn't just about me helping you financially. This is about my daughter seeing that when you have power to help someone, you do it. That art matters. That people matter. Catherine asked me to teach Ruby the world was worth caring about. and I can't do that by keeping her in a bubble. Stella met his eyes, and something passed between them. Recognition of shared grief. Okay, Stella said finally. But if I die, you tell her some fights you lose even when you fight hard. Don't let her think hoping harder would have changed anything. Owen extended his hand. Deal. Stella shook it, her grip surprisingly strong. Now let's talk practical details, Owen said. I'll set up studio space in an unused office on the 15th floor. South-facing windows, good natural light. You can work whenever you want. I'll get you a key card. Materials budget is $5,000 to start. And I'll have Jennifer draw up a formal commission contract. Stella pulled out a notebook and started writing. I'll need specific supplies, professional-grade watercolor paper, certain pigments, particular brushes. It'll be expensive. Owen waved dismissively. Stella, I pay senior architects $140,000 annually. Material costs are a rounding error. Get what you need for your best work. She looked up, and for the first time he saw hope flicker. You really think people will buy my work? Not because they pity me, but because it's good? Owen's response was certain. I know they will. I'm not the only person who recognizes quality, and I'm going to make sure the right people see it. He pulled out his phone. I know Margaret Ashford personally. She runs the Ashford Gallery in Boston, one of the most respected contemporary galleries in New England. I'm inviting her to your exhibition. If she likes what she sees, you might get representation beyond what I can do locally. Stella's pen stopped moving. You'd risk your reputation asking someone like that to look at student work? Owen met her gaze. I'm not risking anything. Your work is good enough. I wouldn't insult Margaret's intelligence by wasting her time with mediocre art. And I wouldn't insult your talent by pretending this is charity when it's investment. Over the next 3 weeks, Owen watched Stella transform the 15th floor office into a working studio. She brought in easels, organized supplies with meticulous care, and spent hours studying how light moved across the room throughout the day. She worked with intensity that bordered on obsessive, as if racing against a deadline she could feel in her bones. Owen stopped by every few days, never staying long, just checking if she needed anything. Ruby came sometimes, sitting quietly in the corner with her sketchpad, and the two worked in companionable silence. Jennifer reported Stella often arrived before 7 and stayed past dark. She's here more than our full-time employees, Jennifer said with concern. Should I say something? Owen shook his head. She's not overworking. She's fighting. Let her fight. He understood the compulsion. Catherine had been the same near the end, trying to pack as much living into remaining time. Stella was doing the same with a paintbrush. The first painting she completed took Owen's breath away. It was titled Before the Storm, and showed a wheat field under darkening sky, golden stalks bent by a wind that hadn't arrived yet. But it wasn't about weather. Anyone looking could feel the anticipation, the knowing that something was coming that would change everything. This is extraordinary, Owen said honestly. This is the kind of piece that stops people in their tracks. Stella looked exhausted but satisfied. Good, because I have 14 more to go, and everyone needs to be better. By week 5, Stella had completed 7 paintings. Owen arranged them in the 20th floor conference room, slowly transforming it into a gallery. Each piece had the same quality, technically brilliant, emotionally devastating. There was Empty Chair, which captured the weight of absence. Holding Breath, an abstract in blues and greys that felt like being underwater. The Last Light, showing sunset through a window with hands pressed against glass from inside. Ruby came to see them after school one Friday, standing in front of each painting for a long time without speaking. Finally, she turned to her father. Miss Stella paints like she's saying goodbye to things. Owen crouched to Ruby's level. What makes you think that? Ruby pointed at The Last Light. Because that's how I draw Mommy. like I'm trying to remember everything before I forget. Owen felt his throat tighten. Maybe that's what all good art is, sweetheart. Trying to hold on to things we're afraid of losing. Stella's health deteriorated during week 6. She called Owen late Tuesday. I'm in the hospital. Infection. 3 to 5 days. I have 8 paintings months. I'm not making 15. I'm sorry. Owen was already grabbing his keys. Which hospital? I'm coming. When he arrived, Stella was in a private room smelling of antiseptic and fear. Her turban was gone, replaced by a hospital cap, and without it, she looked impossibly young. You didn't have to come, Stella said, relief obvious. Owen pulled up a chair. Yes, I did. You're going to focus on getting through this infection. The paintings don't matter now. Your life matters. The art can wait. Stella shook her head weakly. The surgery can't. I'm at 9 weeks, maybe 3 more before the window closes, and I'm not close to raising enough money. How much do you need? Owen asked quietly. Stella showed him her phone with shaking hands. I've got 94,000, the surgery is 250, so 156,000 short. Owen did quick math. The art sale would cover maybe 40 or 50 if they priced aggressively and sold everything, which left about $100,000 gap. He could write that check now, but if he did, Stella would refuse, would see it as charity, would lose the sense of agency keeping her fighting. Here's what we're doing, Owen said slowly. We're moving up the exhibition. 2 weeks from now. We'll show the 8 pieces you've completed and call it a preview exhibition. We'll invite everyone, collectors, gallery owners, press. Owen continued, and we're pricing work at market value for established artists, not emerging, between 8 and 15,000 per piece. Stella's eyes widened. That's insane. No one's paying that for student work. Owen smiled. They will when they see the quality. Trust me. Stella's voice was barely a whisper. And if they don't? If we throw this exhibition and nothing sells? Owen leaned forward, his voice firm. Then I'll buy every piece myself at those prices. But Stella, I don't think it'll come to that. I've already sent images to Margaret Ashford. She's driving down from Boston. She doesn't do that for work. She doesn't take seriously. Stella closed her eyes, tears leaking from the corners. Why are you doing this? Really? And don't tell me it's just Catherine or Ruby. There has to be more. Owen was quiet for a long moment, searching for complete truth. Because for 3 years I've been sleepwalking, running a company, raising Ruby, going through motions. I have more money than I'll ever need, and none of it means anything because the person I earned it for is gone. And then I saw you on that sidewalk, fighting to stay alive by selling $20 paintings, and something in me woke up. He paused. You reminded me that being alive is supposed to mean something, that having resources should be useful. You gave me back purpose. So maybe I'm not saving you. Maybe you're saving me. Stella opened her eyes, clearer now. Okay, let's do it. Let's throw this exhibition and see what happens. But Owen, if it doesn't work, if people don't buy the paintings, I need you to promise me something. Owen waited. I need you to take Ruby to the ocean sometime and tell her I tried, that I fought as hard as I could, because I think she needs to know that trying matters even when you lose. Owen's vision blurred. You're not going to lose. We're not letting you lose. The next 2 weeks were a controlled hurricane. Owen hired a professional curator, transformed the 20th floor into gallery space, and called in every favor in Portland's art community. Jennifer handled invitations, sending elegant cards to every collector, gallery owner, and art patron in the city. The event was scheduled for Friday night. Hope in Darkness, Works by Stella Grant. Stella was released from the hospital after 4 days and immediately returned to her studio, driven by some internal engine that wouldn't stop. Ruby helped where she could, addressing envelopes with careful penmanship, and asking questions about how galleries worked. Owen found himself explaining auction dynamics to a 9-year-old who listened with surprising intensity. "So people bid money on art they like?" Ruby asked. "And whoever bids most gets it." Owen nodded. "Exactly." The morning of the exhibition, Owen arrived at 6 to do final checks. The space had been transformed. Track lighting focused on each painting, small plaques with titles and starting bids, a table for champagne and refreshments, chairs arranged for the presentation. Stella was already there, standing in front of her work with arms crossed, studying each piece with critical intensity. "Having second thoughts?" Owen asked gently. Stella shook her head. "No, just saying goodbye to them. After tonight, they won't be mine anymore." Owen said quietly, "They'll always be yours. Selling them doesn't change that you created them." Stella turned to look at him, and he saw how much she'd changed in 6 weeks. "Owen, I need to tell you something before tonight," Stella said, "in case I don't get another chance. When I was in the hospital, I had time to think, and I realized that even if the surgery doesn't work, even if I don't make it, this has been worth it. Not just the art, but having someone believe in me. Having Ruby look at me like I'm someone worth knowing. That matters more than the paintings." Owen felt emotion rise but pushed it down. This wasn't the time to fall apart. "You're going to make it, Stella. I don't say things I don't believe, and I believe that." Stella smiled slightly. "Maybe. But just in case, I wanted you to know. You kept your promise to Catherine. You showed Ruby what doing something that matters looks like. By 7 p.m. The 20th floor was packed with far more people than Owen expected. He'd anticipated maybe 80 guests. Nearly 200 showed up. They filled the space, champagne in hand, moving from painting to painting with that particular hush that happens when people encounter art that demands attention. Owen spotted Margaret Ashford almost immediately, elegant in black, standing absorbed in front of Before the Storm. He didn't interrupt her. Let the work speak for itself. Stella arrived at 7:15, and Owen heard the subtle shift in energy when people realized the artist was present. She'd dressed carefully, simple black dress, silk scarf instead of turban, minimal makeup. But she stood straight, meeting eyes when people approached. At 7:30, Owen called for attention, stepping forward with a microphone. "Thank you for coming tonight. I'm Owen Harper, and I have the privilege of hosting this exhibition. But before we begin, I want to explain why we're here." He paused, making sure he had everyone's focus. "6 weeks ago, I met Stella Grant selling paintings on a sidewalk for $25 each. I bought one for my daughter, who saw herself in the work. And I realized I was looking at someone with extraordinary talent who wasn't getting the recognition she deserved." Owen continued, his voice steady. "What you're seeing tonight is 8 pieces from a larger series. Each work represents not just technical skill, but emotional honesty. Stella paints things we feel but can't name: loss, hope, the weight of time, the texture of memory." Owen explained. "This isn't student work, despite Stella being 2 semesters from her degree. This is work of an artist who has something to say and knows how to say it." He could see people nodding, looking at paintings with new attention. "Tonight, we're doing something unusual. This is both exhibition and auction. Each piece has a starting bid, and we'll take sealed bids throughout the evening. Starting prices reflect what I believe this work is worth in today's market, between $8,000 and $15,000 per piece." Owen heard gasps but pushed forward. "I know that's high for an emerging artist, but I'm asking you to look at the work, not the resume. Art should be valued for what it is, not who made it." He gestured to Stella, who stepped forward reluctantly. "Stella, would you like to say anything?" She shook her head, then changed her mind. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but carried. "I don't usually like talking about my work. I prefer to let it speak for itself. But I'll say this. Every painting here is about the same thing. Trying to hold on to moments that are slipping away, looking at things clearly when you might not see them much longer. If that resonates with you, maybe the work is for you. The sincerity of it seemed to land harder than any prepared speech could have. Owen watched people looking at Stella with new respect, then turning back to paintings with deeper attention. Margaret Ashford approached Owen as the crowd dispersed. "She's remarkable," Margaret said without preamble. "The technique is professional level, but more importantly, she has a voice. That's what you can't teach." Owen felt relief wash through him. "So you'll consider representing her?" Margaret asked. "Why are you really doing this? I've known you 6 years, and you've never shown this level of personal involvement before." Owen met her eyes. "Because she's dying. Ovarian cancer. She needs surgery that costs $250,000, and she's running out of time." Margaret's expression shifted to understanding. "Does she know you told me?" Owen nodded. "She knows if people ask directly, I'll be honest. But I won't use it as sales tactic. The work has to stand on its own." Margaret looked back at the paintings. "It does. That's what makes this complicated. Because now I have to decide if I'm interested because the work is good, or because I'm moved by her circumstances." She was quiet. "But the work is good enough that it doesn't matter. I'd want to represent this artist regardless. The medical situation just adds urgency." Owen asked, "So you'll make her an offer?" Margaret smiled. "Let's see how tonight goes first. But yes, I'm interested." By 9 p.m. the crowd had thinned, but energy remained high. Owen nodded to Jennifer, who brought him the bid box. "Should we open these now?" Stella asked nervously. Owen looked at her pale face, at how she swayed with exhaustion. "Now, let's do this now." They gathered in a corner, Owen, Stella, Ruby, Jennifer, and Margaret, who'd stayed specifically for this. Owen opened the first envelope. "Before the storm, starting bid 12,000. We have 17 bids ranging from 12 to 28,000. High bid is 28. Stella's hand flew to her mouth. Owen opened the next. "Empty chair, starting 10. High bid 32,000. He continued through all 8 paintings, his voice getting rougher as numbers climbed. When he finished, he did quick math on his phone. Total from high bids, $194,000. Stella made a sound half laugh, half sob. "That's not enough. I'm still 56,000 short." Before Owen could respond, Margaret spoke. "About that. Ashford Gallery would like to offer you a 3-year representation contract. We'll take 40% commission on future sales, standard rate. But part of our contract includes a signing bonus. For an artist of your caliber, that bonus would be $50,000. She pulled a folder from her bag. "I had my lawyer draw up preliminary terms. You'd need your own lawyer to review, but the offer is genuine." Stella stared at the folder. "You're offering me $50,000? Margaret nodded. "Plus gallery representation, a solo show in Boston within the year, and introduction to our collector network. This isn't charity, Stella. This is business. I represent artists I believe in, and I believe in you." Owen watched Stella's composure crumble, watched her try to hold together and fail. Ruby stepped forward and took Stella's hand, holding it while she cried. Owen pulled out his phone for final math. $194 from tonight, 50 signing bonus. That's $244. You need $250. That leaves $6,000. He looked at Jennifer. "Do we have corporate community budget left?" Jennifer checked her tablet. 12,000 allocated but unused. Owen nodded decisively. "Harper and Associates will donate 6,000 to Stella's medical fund. Stella, you just hit your goal." The silence that followed felt sacred. Stella looked at Owen, at Margaret, at Ruby, at the room full of paintings and people who'd chosen to invest. "I don't know what to say." Owen smiled, feeling lighter than he had in 3 years. "Don't say anything. Just schedule the surgery." Margaret added, And get well so you can paint me 15 more for your Boston show. Stella laughed through tears. No pressure, right? Ruby, quiet through this, spoke suddenly. Miss Stella, does this mean you get to live? Everyone looked at the 9-year-old who'd just asked what they were all dancing around. Stella crouched to Ruby's level, wincing at the movement. It means I get a fighting chance, sweetheart. The surgery isn't guaranteed, but now I get to try. And that's everything. Ruby threw her arms around Stella's neck. Good, because I'm not done learning to paint from you yet. Over Ruby's shoulder, Stella met Owen's eyes, and the gratitude there was almost too much to bear. This was what Catherine meant. This was what she'd asked him to do. Find someone worth saving and help them discover what their life could become. 3 days later, Stella checked into Maine Medical Center for pre-surgical prep. The procedure was scheduled for Wednesday. 6 hours of surgery followed by weeks of recovery. Owen visited the night before, bringing Ruby despite the late hour. We won't stay long, he promised. Stella was in a hospital gown with IVs in place, but she smiled when they arrived. Hey, kiddo, shouldn't you be in bed? Ruby climbed onto the edge of Stella's bed. I painted something for you, for after your surgery when you wake up. She pulled out paper from her backpack, a watercolor of 3 people holding hands under a sky full of stars. That's you and me and Daddy, Ruby explained, and those are all the people watching from heaven. Mummy and your mummy and Daddy. I think they're friends now. Stella's eyes filled with tears. Ruby, this is the most beautiful thing anyone's ever painted for me. Owen cleared his throat, fighting emotion. Stella, whatever happens tomorrow, you've already won. You fought hard enough to get here, and that matters. But you're going to come through this, and when you do, you'll have a whole life ahead. A career. A future. Everything you thought you'd lost. Stella reached out and took his hand. Owen, if something goes wrong... He cut her off. Nothing's going wrong, but I'll be here. I'll be in the waiting room the whole time. You won't be alone. The surgery took 7 hours. Owen paced the waiting room, checking his phone compulsively, drinking terrible cafeteria coffee. Jennifer called twice with work questions, but he couldn't focus. Ruby was at school, but she'd made him promise to text the moment he knew anything. Finally, at 3:45, the surgeon emerged. Mr. Harper, Miss Grant is out of surgery. We got everything we could see. The tumor was larger than expected, but we believe we achieved clean margins. The next 72 hours are critical for infection and complications, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Owen felt his knees go weak with relief. Can I see her? The surgeon nodded. She'll be unconscious for a few hours, but you can sit with her. Owen followed a nurse to the ICU, where Stella lay surrounded by monitors and tubes, her face pale against white sheets. He pulled up a chair and sat down, watching the steady rise and fall of her breathing. He thought about Catherine, about how he'd sat in a room like this and watched her slip away despite everything. But this time felt different. This time, they'd caught it in time. This time, the fight had been worth it. Stella woke around 7, groggy and disoriented. Her eyes focused on Owen sitting beside her. You stayed. Her voice was barely a whisper. Owen leaned forward. I told you I would. The surgeon says it went well. They got everything. Stella's eyes closed briefly. How long until we know if it worked? Owen had asked the same question. Scans in 6 weeks to check for remaining cancer cells. But right now, you're cancer-free. You did it, Stella. You survived. The weeks that followed were a strange mix of normal life and hospital visits. Ruby insisted on making cards for Stella every few days, which Owen delivered during evening visits. Stella's recovery was slow but steady. She moved from ICU to regular room after 5 days, started walking short distances after 2 weeks, was released to outpatient care after 3. Throughout, Owen found himself involved in ways he hadn't expected, helping with insurance paperwork, driving to follow-up appointments, coordinating with Margaret about exhibition timeline. 8 weeks after surgery, Stella got her first post-operative scan results. Owen drove her to the appointment, Ruby in the back seat chattering about school. They sat together in the oncologist's office, waiting for Dr. Patterson to come with results. When the door opened, the doctor was smiling. "Stella, your scans are clean. No detectable cancer. We'll monitor you closely for 5 years, but right now, you're in remission." Stella didn't cry. She just sat very still, as if moving might shatter the moment. That night, Owen took Stella and Ruby to dinner at a restaurant overlooking Casco Bay. It was Stella's first social outing since diagnosis, and she'd worn a silk scarf. Her hair was growing back in soft patches. Ruby sat between them, talking about everything and nothing, and Owen watched Stella slowly relax, watched her laugh at Ruby's stories, watched her look at sunset over water like she was seeing color for the first time. "What are you going to paint next?" Ruby asked. Stella considered seriously. "I think I want to paint what hope looks like. Not the big dramatic kind, but the small daily kind. The kind that happens when you wake up and realize you get another day." Owen raised his glass. "To another day?" Stella clinked her water glass against it. "To another day." Ruby held up her drink with both hands. "To so many days we get tired of counting them." 3 months later, Stella's solo exhibition opened at Ashford Gallery in Boston. The show was called After the Storm, a direct continuation of the painting that started everything. Owen and Ruby drove up for the opening, and the gallery was packed with collectors, critics, and art enthusiasts. Stella's work filled the space, and Owen could see how she'd evolved. The new painting still carried emotional weight, but there was something different now. Light, maybe, or just possibility. Margaret gave a short speech about discovering Stella, about evolution of her work, about intersection of technical skill and emotional truth. But the moment that stopped everyone was when Ruby stepped forward, unrehearsed, and said to the crowd, "Miss Stella taught me that painting is about showing people they're not alone. She's really good at that." The simplicity of it, from a 10-year-old who'd lost her mother, somehow said more than any art critic could. The show sold out completely, every piece gone by end of night. Stella stood in the empty gallery afterward, looking at red dots next to each title card, and started laughing. "I can't believe this is real." Margaret hugged her. "Believe it, you're launched. This is just the beginning." Owen watched from across the room, feeling something settle into place. This was what Catherine meant. This was what she'd asked him to do. Find someone worth saving and help them discover what their life could become. 6 months after that, on a crisp fall afternoon, Owen married Stella in a small ceremony at home. Ruby was flower girl, scattering petals with serious concentration. It wasn't the relationship either had planned. They'd stumbled into love sideways, through crisis and recovery and shared purpose. But it worked. Stella moved into the house, converted the basement into a proper studio, and continued painting while Ruby watched and learned. The three became a family not because biology demanded it, but because they'd chosen each other. Ruby was 12 when Stella's 5-year cancer-free milestone came and went without incident. They celebrated with a small party, just the three and close friends. That night, after everyone left, Ruby found Owen in Stella's studio, looking at the painting of the child reaching for stars, the one Ruby had bought for $17 years ago. "You miss Mom," Ruby said. Not a question. Owen nodded honestly. "Every day, but I also love the life we have now. Both things can be true." Ruby leaned against his side. "Mom would like Stella. I think they'd be friends." Owen put his arm around his daughter. "I think so too. Your mother had a gift for recognizing people worth knowing." Ruby was quiet. Dad, can I tell you something? Owen looked down. Always. Ruby took a breath. I used to paint to talk to Mom because I was scared I'd forget her. But now I paint because it makes me happy. Is that okay? Owen felt his throat tighten. That's more than okay, sweetheart. That's exactly what your mother wanted. For you to live fully, not just remember sadly. Ruby nodded, satisfied. Good. Because Stella's teaching me oil painting next, and I want to paint big canvases, not just notebook pages. Owen laughed. Then that's what you'll do. They stood together in the studio, surrounded by paintings about hope and loss and the strange grace of getting another chance. Years later, when interviewers asked Stella about her breakthrough, about going from selling on a sidewalk to being in major galleries, she always told them the same thing. I met someone who believed in me before I believed in myself. Someone who understood that helping isn't about pity. It's about giving people the chance to fight. And I learned that accepting help isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing you can do, because it means admitting you can't do everything alone. And when those interviewers asked Owen why he'd taken such a risk on an unknown artist, he'd smile and say, because my wife made me promise to show our daughter what doing something that matters looks like. And because sometimes you meet someone whose life you can actually change, and if you have the resources to help and choose not to, what's the point of having resources? Then he'd pause. But honestly, I think Stella saved us as much as we saved her. She reminded us that the world is worth caring about. Ruby, who became an artist herself, eventually painted a series inspired by those early days. The centerpiece was a large canvas showing 3 figures on a city sidewalk: a man, a child, and a young woman surrounded by paintings. The title was simple, The Moment Everything Changed, and underneath, in small letters, she'd written, For Mom, who taught us to care, for Dad, who showed us how, and for Stella, who let us help. Because that's what it came down to in the end. Not the money, or the success, or the cancer that was beaten. Just 3 people who found each other at exactly the right moment and chose to believe that helping and being helped was worth the risk. That love didn't have to look one particular way to be real. That family could be built from intention and care and showing up when it mattered. That sometimes the unthinkable thing, the thing that changes everything, is simply refusing to walk past someone who needs you. And that maybe, just maybe, saving someone else's life is how you remember how to live your own.